Faith is not a shield. It is a target. For every believer who bows their head in prayer, there is a darkness in the shadows that watches, waits, and hungers. It doesn't care about your goodness. It doesn't care about your soul. It only cares about breaking you. It wants to hear you scream, not just in pain, but in despair. It wants you to curse the very God you once loved. And when you do, when that final fragment of hope shatters, it doesn't just kill you, it owns you. This is the story of a man who watched his world dissolve into ash. He buried his son. He lost his wife to the abyss. He felt the rope tighten around his own neck, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Death wasn't the end for him. It was just the beginning of a war he never asked for. A war fought in the corners of dimly lit rooms and the deepest caverns of the human mind. He walked out of the grave, not alive, but not dead either. He walked back into the nightmare to find the woman who was taken from him, only to discover that the real demons weren't hiding in the dark. They were wearing human faces. The air in the room was thick, heavy with a stench that smelled like sulfur and rotting meat. It was suffocating, a physical weight pressing against the chest. In the center of the chaos stood a man named Kudrat. His body was glistening with sweat, his muscles trembling from exertion, but his eyes were fixed with a terrifying intensity on the small, thrashing figure in front of him. The boy was a leaf, Kudrat's only son. It wasn't a leaf anymore. The thing looking out through the boy's eyes was ancient, malevolent, and furious. It was a Jinn, a demon of smokeless fire, and it was tearing the room apart. Furniture shattered against the walls, glass exploding into shimmering rain. The demonic force inside the child laughed, a sound that grated against the nerves like a rusted blade. Kudrat wasn't just a father. He was a healer, a man of deep spiritual connection who had cast out spirits before. But this was different. This wasn't a wandering entity. This was Aswala, a follower of Iblis himself, a general in the army of darkness. A lift's body levitated, hovering inches above the floor, his back arched in an impossible, agonizing angle. His head spun around, snapping with a wet, sickening crunch, and when he spoke, it wasn't a child's voice. It was a guttural growl that vibrated in the floorboards. "You promised," the demon hissed, the sound echoing in the small room. "You promised pain until the end." Kudrat lunged, grabbing the boy's arms, trying to bring him back to the earth. But the force was like trying to wrestle a tornado. He was thrown backward, crashing into a table and sliding across the floor. He gasped, blood filling his mouth from a bitten tongue. But he scrambled to his feet. He couldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. "For the love of God, leave him," Kudrat screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. The boy turned toward him, eyes rolled back so far only the whites were visible. "God," the demon sneered. "Where is your God now?" A lift's body convulsed violently. The demon lunged, not with hands, but with the sheer force of its will. It struck Kudrat like a physical blow, sending him flying into the wall. Kudrat slumped down, his vision swimming, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He tried to crawl forward, his fingers digging into the wood. "Just let him go," Kudrat whispered, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on his face. A leaf dropped to the floor. The demon looked at the broken man and smiled, a wide, grotesque expression on the child's face. "Watch." The demon inside the boy reached up, placing small hands on either side of the lift's head. Kudrat's eyes widened in horror. He screamed, launching himself forward. But he was too far away. He was too weak. There was a sharp, sickening snap, like a dry branch breaking in a dead forest. A leaf went limp. The laughter stopped instantly. The oppressive silence that followed was louder than the violence had been. Kudrat froze. The world narrowed down to that small, motionless body lying on the floor. "No." He breathed. "No, no, no." He crawled over, gathering his son into his arms. The head lolled at an impossible angle. The skin was already cooling. The spark, the life, the laughter, it was all gone, consumed by the darkness. Kudrat threw his head back and howled, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony that seemed to shake the foundations of the house itself. He had failed. He had fought the devil, and the devil had one. Time in prison is measured not in days, but in the slow erosion of the soul. Kudrat sat on the cold metal cot, his knees drawn to his chest. The cell was small, damp, and smelled of old piss and mildew. But it wasn't the prison that held him captive. It was the silence in his own heart. He had stopped praying. What was the point? He had devoted his life to God, healing the sick, protecting the weak. And what had he gotten in return? His son murdered by a monster. His wife, Aziza, had vanished, driven away by grief and the whispers of demons that he couldn't fight anymore. He felt hollowed out, a walking shell filled with nothing but bitterness. The heavy steel door buzzed and slid open. Kudrat didn't look up. He didn't care who it was. A guard, maybe, or just another ghost coming to haunt him. Footsteps echoed on the concrete, heavy. Deliberate, they stopped in front of his cell. Time for your release. A voice rasped. Kudrat slowly lifted his head. The guard standing there was a tall, gaunt man. He wore a sneer that didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were black, void of any humanity. I'm not leaving, Kudrat muttered, turning his gaze back to the wall. I have nowhere to go. The guard laughed, a dry, rattling sound. Oh, you're leaving. But you're not going home, you're going to hell. Before Kudrat could react, the guard lunged. He moved with unnatural speed, grabbing Kudrat by the throat and lifting him off the cot. Kudrat clawed at the hands, but the grip was iron tight. He was dragged out of the cell, stumbling down the long, dim hallway. The other cells were silent. The other prisoners were hiding. Even in a place full of criminals, they sensed the evil that walked among them. The guard dragged him into a room at the end of the hall. It was empty except for a thick, heavy beam hanging from the ceiling, with a noose swaying gently in the draft. You promised, the guard said, his voice shifting, dropping an octave, morphing into the same demonic growl that had killed his son. I promised you pain until death. Kudrat's blood ran cold. Aswala. The demon was here. It had never left. The guard shoved the noose over Kudrat's head. The rough rope bit into his neck. Kudrat struggled, panic overriding his apathy. But the demon was too strong. The guard hoisted him up, kicking the crate out from under his feet. Kudrat gagged, his airway cut off instantly. His feet kicked at empty air. His vision blurred. The pain was blinding, a fire in his lungs. He could feel his life slipping away, strand by strand. Then darkness. Not the darkness of a closed room, but an endless, white void. The pain vanished. The suffocating pressure was gone. Kudrat opened his eyes. He was standing in a vast, white desert. There was no sun. Yet everything was bathed in soft, ethereal light. The silence here wasn't oppressive. It was peaceful. In the distance, he could hear the faint, rhythmic chant of the adhan, the Islamic call to prayer. It wasn't coming from a mosque. It felt like it was coming from the very fabric of this place. In front of him, a patch of sand shifted, forming a perfect stone slab for ablution. Water, clear and cool, appeared in a basin nearby. Kudrat stared, his mind trying to process where he was. Was this death, or something else? He felt a pull, a gentle urging. He wasn't being forced. He was being invited. He knelt by the water, washing his face, his arms. The water washed away the grime of the prison, the sweat of fear, the tears of grief. He felt a clarity returning to his mind, a clarity he hadn't felt since his son died. He stood up on the slab. He didn't know how he knew what to do, but his body moved on its own, performing the prayer. He bowed, he prostrated. With every movement, he felt a connection restoring. He wasn't talking to a distant God anymore. He was in the presence of the divine. As he finished the final prostration, the white world began to dissolve. The peaceful light fractured into a chaotic whirlwind of wind and fire. A searing heat blasted him. The adhan faded into the screams of the damned. Kudrat gasped, inhaling a lungful of stale, chemical air. He was wrapped in a white plastic sheet. He was on a metal table. He wasn't in the desert. He was in the morgue. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had died. He had been hanged. He had been to the threshold and brought back. He tore the plastic sheet away, panic rising in his chest. He was alive. He was actually physically alive. He looked around the room. Shelves lined the walls, covered in bodies. He was in the drawer. He kicked the door open, stumbling out into the cold room. He had to get out. He didn't know why or how, but he knew his journey wasn't over. Aswala had tried to kill him, but God had denied him the victory. Kudrat had been sent back, but for what? He stole a pair of pants and a shirt from a locker, the fabric feeling foreign and stiff against his skin. He found a jacket and a pair of dark sunglasses to hide his eyes that had seen the other side and couldn't quite hide the depth of that horror. He walked out of the hospital into the gray light of dawn. The city felt alien, harsh. Every car horn, every shout, every siren felt like an assault. He needed to go home. Not to the city, but to the village. To the place where it had all started. He boarded a bus, sinking low into the sticky seat. He pulled a small, worn Quran from his pocket, a remnant of his past life. He opened it, but the words blurred. He couldn't focus. He felt a lingering coldness in his veins, a whisper of the noose. The bus jolted and swayed. Across the aisle, a little girl sat with her grandmother. The girl stared at Kudrat, her eyes wide and unblinking. Then, she started to cry. It wasn't a normal cry. It was a low, wailing sound that sent a shiver down Kudrat's spine. He felt a shift in the air. The temperature dropped. The hair on his arm stood up. He looked behind the girl. There was nothing but empty seats. But he could feel it. A presence not watching, not waiting. Kudrat closed his eyes and began to whisper a prayer, a protective verse. The tears stopped instantly. The air warmed. When he looked again, the girl was sleeping, her head resting on her grandmother's shoulder. The old woman looked at Kudrat, suspicion and fear whirring in her eyes. She pulled the child closer. Kudrat turned away, looking out the window. The darkness was still out there, and he was walking right back into its den. The village was dying. Kudrat saw it the moment he stepped off the bus. The fields, usually a vibrant green sea of rice, were brown and withered. The sky was a permanent, bruised gray. The silence was heavy, the kind that falls when hope has abandoned a place entirely. He walked past a signboard weathered by rain and sun. It warned people away from the lands belonging to the local madrasa. Forbidden. Keep out. He ignored it. He walked toward the center of the village, toward the madrasa where he had studied as a boy. He saw a group of women walking toward a house, their faces painted with a mixture of fear and determination. One of them, a woman named Arifa, carried a pot of food. He followed them at a distance. They entered a house where the screams of a girl could be heard tearing through the afternoon air. Kudrat stopped at the gate. His hand trembled. He knew that sound. He knew the violence in that scream. He walked in. In the courtyard, a young girl named Jihan was tied to a wooden post. She thrashed against the ropes, her eyes wild, froth bubbling at her lips. A man stood over her, trying to read verses, but he was shaking, his voice weak. The possessed girl laughed, mocking his efforts. She slammed her head against the wooden post, once, twice, 3 times. Blood splattered across the ground. The men holding the ropes recoiled in horror. She didn't stop. With a final, sickening crunch, she went limp. The courtyard fell into a terrified silence. Kudrat turned away, his stomach churning. He couldn't watch anymore. He had seen enough death. He made his way to the madrasa. He pushed open the heavy wooden doors. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds. The water in the ablution pool was stagnant and black. Inside the main hall, he saw an old man lying on a bed, his breathing shallow and rattling. This was the Ustad, the teacher who had raised Kudrat and Jafar. A younger man, Jafar, sat by the bedside, wiping the old man's forehead. He looked up and saw Kudrat standing in the doorway. The towel dropped from his hand. Kudrat, Jafar whispered, his voice cracking with disbelief. Is that really you? They embraced, 2 friends reunited in a place of sorrow. But Kudrat had no time for pleasantries. What happened? To this village, Kudrat asked, looking around the decaying hall. Why is the land dying? Jafar's face darkened. It started 3 years ago, he said softly. The night Alif died. Kudrat flinched at the name. The Usted fellow shortly after. Jafar continued. He prays day and night. He begs for help. But the help, it never comes. The crops fail. The sickness spreads. People are scared. Kudrat, they are losing their faith. Jafar looked at Kudrat, his eyes searching for the strength he knew his friend once possessed. You were the best, Kudrat. The ruqya, the healing, it flowed through you like water. But you lost your son. You lost everything. Why did you come back? To find answers, Kudrat said, his voice low, and to find my wife. Jafar looked away. Aziza, we don't know where she is. She left. She couldn't bear the grief. Kudrat looked at his hands. He remembered the noose. He remembered the white void. God isn't done with me yet, Jafar. And I don't think he's done with this village. Night fell over the village, bringing with it a fresh wave of terror. In a small house nearby, Arifa was trying to put her son, also named Alif, to bed. The boy was in a wheelchair, his legs withered and useless since an accident years ago. He was a quiet child, withdrawn, often staring at walls that no one else could see. Go to sleep, Alif, Arifa said, tucking the blankets around him. Asa and I are right outside. Alif didn't answer. He just kept looking toward the old, wooden wardrobe in the corner of the room. Outside, Arifa sat with her daughter, Asa. The younger woman was angry, her face flushed with the heat of an argument. They are ignorant, mother, Asa hissed. Jihan didn't die of a sickness. She died because they treated her like a witch instead of taking her to a doctor. And now look at us, stuck in a cursed village, praying to a sky that refuses to listen. Watch your tongue, Asa, Arifa warned. Though her voice was tired, faith is all we have left. Faith doesn't feed. U.S. Asa snapped. Faith didn't save Jihan. Inside the room, Alif slowly turned his wheelchair around. He rolled toward the wardrobe. The doors were slightly ajar, revealing a dark and possibly deep space within. He reached out a small hand and pushed the doors open. He wasn't afraid. He was smiling. Daddy? He whispered. In the shadows of the wardrobe, something shifted. A pair of eyes, glowing with a faint yellow light, blinked back at him. Inside the madrasa, Kudrat sat in the darkened prayer hall. He was trying to reconnect with the rituals that had once defined his life. He opened the Quran, but the letters danced before his eyes. A sudden wind whipped through the room. Despite the windows being shut, it blew out the single candle Kudrat was using, plunging him into darkness. He stood up, his instincts on high alert. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. He wasn't alone. He turned slowly. Standing in the doorway was a woman. It was dark, but he would recognize her silhouette anywhere. It was Arifa, but her posture was wrong, rigid, jerky. Where is he? The figure rasped. It sounded like Arifa, but the voice was distorted, layered with a static hiss. Where is who? Kudrat asked, taking a step back. My son, the figure snarled. He says he's with his father now, but he needs a new body. Arifa lunged, but she didn't move like a human. She moved with the speed of a predator, crossing the room in a blur of motion. She slashed at Kudrat with a shard of broken glass she had been hiding. Kudrat barely dodged, the glass tearing through his shirt and grazing his skin. He grabbed her wrists, trying to restrain her, but she was impossibly strong. She thrashed and bit. Her eyes rolled back in her head, her jaw unhinging unnaturally wide. Arifa, he shouted, shaking her. Fight it, she spat in his face. A black, viscous fluid that smelled of rot. She's not home. The demon giggled, and neither is your little boy. Chaos erupted in the small house. Asa heard the scream and ran inside, but the bedroom door slammed shut before she could reach it, locking from the inside. Alif, she screamed, pounding on the wood. Inside, Alif was out of the wheelchair. He was standing, his legs trembling but holding him up. He was holding the shard of glass he had somehow taken from his mother, or rather, the thing controlling his mother. He walked toward the door. "Come in, sister." The demon whispered through the boy's lips. "We're waiting." Asa backed away. Terror gripping her heart, she ran to the window, looking for a way in. But the room was sealed tight. Then she heard a sound from behind her, a slow, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. She turned around. Her mother, Arifa, was standing at the end of the hallway. But she wasn't looking at Asa. She was looking at the ceiling. "Mother," Asa choked out. Arifa turned her head slowly. Her eyes were gone, just empty, black sockets. "Dinner is ready." Arifa smiled, a smile that was too wide, showing too many teeth. "Come and eat, Asa." Asa screamed and bolted out the back door, running blindly into the night. She ran all the way to the madrasa, bursting through the gates, her chest heaving, her lungs burning. She found Kudrat and Jafar in the courtyard. They looked battered, bleeding from the fight with the possessed Arifa. "Help me," Asa cried, collapsing to her knees. "They took him. They took my brother." Kudrat didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his prayer beads and a small bottle of holy water. He ran back toward the house with Jafar and a terrified Asa close behind. They arrived to find the house silent. Too silent. The front door was open, swinging slightly in the wind. Kudrat stepped inside. The air was freezing. He could smell the distinct, sulfurous stench of a demonic presence. He walked into the bedroom. The wardrobe doors were open, revealing a tunnel of absolute darkness. Alif was sitting on the bed. He looked normal. He looked like a frightened little boy. "Help me," Alif whimpered, holding out his arms. "Please, Uncle Kudrat, make the bad man go away." Kudrat hesitated. It was a trap. He knew it was a trap. But looking into the boy's eyes, seeing the echo of his own lost son, he felt his resolve crumbling. He stepped forward, reaching out to touch the boy's forehead. "Don't," Jafar shouted from the doorway. But it was too late. Alif's face twisted. The innocent expression vanished, replaced by a mask of pure malice. He grabbed Kudrat's wrist, his grip crushing the bone. "You really are stupid, aren't you?" The demon hissed. "Aswala said you'd be easy." Kudrat gritted his teeth against the pain. He began to recite, his voice steady and strong. The words of the Quran filled the room, hot and bright. The demon shrieked, recoiling as if burned. Smoke began to rise from Alif's skin. "Tell me your name," Kudrat commanded, pushing the boy back onto the bed. "I am Kadab," the creature screamed. "I am the servant of Dajjal. I am the eater of souls." Alif's body arched again, the bones popping audibly. Black liquid began to pour from his mouth and eyes, pulling on the bed sheets. The demon was fighting, trying to hold on. But the spiritual assault was too much. With a final, deafening roar, the entity was expelled. A cloud of black smoke erupted from the boy's mouth, swirling around the room before shooting out the window and dissipating into the night sky. Alif collapsed, unconscious but breathing. Kudrat slumped to the floor, exhausted. It was over. But as the adrenaline faded, he felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. The demon had given up too easily, and it had mentioned a name, Aswala. Aswala was still here. The next morning brought a fragile peace. Alif was weak, but he was himself again. Arifa slept, the possession having taken a heavy toll on her physical body. But the village was still withering, and Kudrat knew the root of the rot hadn't been pulled out. He went to see Jafar. He found his old friend in his office, counting a stack of money. "Where did you get that?" Kudrat asked, his voice hard. Jafar looked up, guilt flashing across his face. "It's the donations for the new mosque." Kudrat walked over and picked up a handful of bills. They were stained with something dark red. It smelled like copper. "Blood money. You're taking money from the villagers to fight the demons you can't exorcise," Kudrat said, his voice trembling with anger. "You're making a business out of their suffering. We need money to survive." Jafar snapped, standing up. "The crops are dead, Kudrat. We have to eat." "Not like this." Kudrat threw the money back on the desk. "This is harem. It's cursed." He turned to leave. I'm leaving. I can't stay here. Where will you go? Jafar asked. Aziza is gone. Your home is gone. I'm going to find the source, Kudrat said, and I'm going to find Aziza. As he walked out of the office, he noticed a trapdoor in the corner of the room, hidden under a rug. It was slightly ajar. He could feel a draft coming from it, carrying the scent of old earth and incense. Jafar noticed him looking. Don't go down there, Jafar warned, his voice dropping. It's the old cellar. It's unstable. Kudrat didn't listen. He lifted the rug and pulled the door open. A set of stone steps led down into the darkness. He descended, the air growing colder with every step. At the bottom, he found a tunnel carved through the rock. He followed it, his hand trailing along the damp wall. It led to a large chamber beneath the madrasa, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. Jafar was there. But this wasn't the Jafar he had just spoken to. Jafar was kneeling in front of a makeshift altar. Candles flickered, illuminating strange symbols drawn on the floor in fresh blood. There were statues, idols, not of God, but of something ancient and hideous. Kudrat drew in a sharp breath. The sound echoed in the chamber. Jafar turned. His face was calm, serene. There was no madness in his eyes, only a cold, calculated resolve. You shouldn't have come here, brother, Jafar said softly. You worship them? Kudrat whispered, the horror tightening his throat. You worship the demons. I worship power, Jafar corrected, standing up. God abandoned us. Kudrat, the crops died. The children got sick. God did nothing. So I found a new master, one who delivers. You sold your soul. Kudrat spat. I bought survival, Jafar countered. Join me. Kudrat, we could rule this village. We could have everything we ever wanted. Aziza, she could be here too. I can help you find her. Don't speak her name. Kudrat roared, launching himself at his friend. They collided. Two men trained in the art of spiritual combat now locked in a brutal, physical struggle. They were evenly matched, but Kudrat was fueled by a righteous fury that Jafar lacked. They crashed into the altar, knocking over candles. The blood symbols smeared. The statues wobbled and fell. Kudrat managed to pin Jafar to the ground, his hands around his friend's throat. Repent. Kudrat shouted, ask for forgiveness before it's too late. Jafar laughed, a choked, gurgling sound. It's already too late. He's coming for you. Kudrat, Aswala, and he's bringing your son with him. Kudrat hesitated. That one word, son, cut through his rage like a knife. It was the distraction Jafar needed. He kicked Kudrat off, scrambling away. He grabbed a dagger from the altar. This ends now, Jafar snarled. He lunged. Kudrat rolled to the side, the blade grazing his ribs. He grabbed a heavy candlestick and swung it, catching Jafar in the side of the head. Jafar crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Kudrat stood over him, his chest heaving. He could kill him. It would be so easy to end this corruption right here. But he wasn't a murderer. He was a healer. He left the underground chamber, sealing the trapdoor behind him. He went to the main hall, where the Usted was waiting. The old man looked weak, but his eyes were clear. I know what Jafar has done, the Usted whispered. I have prayed for him, but my prayers were not enough. You must finish this, Kudrat. I'm leaving, Kudrat said. I can't fight this war here. Go, the Usted said. Go find Aziza. She left letters for you. She wrote to me while you were away. They are in my desk. Kudrat opened the drawer and found a stack of envelopes. His name was scrawled on them in Aziza's handwriting. His hands shook as he picked them up. He walked out of the madrasa, leaving the village behind. But as he reached the edge of the forest, he saw a figure standing by the side of the road. It was Alif, not his son, but Arif's boy. He was standing, unsupported, for the first time in years. Uncle Kudrat, the boy called out. Thank you. Kudrat smiled, a small piece of light in the darkness. He got on the motorcycle the Usted had given him and rode away, the wind whipping through his clothes, carrying the smell of rain and impending doom. He stopped by a stream, miles from the village. He opened the first letter. The paper was crinkled, stained with tears. "My dearest Kudrat," it began. "I am writing this from a place that has no name. I am working in a factory, but it feels like a prison. I am surrounded by people, but I have never been so alone." Kudrat read on, his heart breaking. "The night Alif died, I saw it. I saw the demon. He came to me, too. He told me I could save him if I just listened. I didn't know what I was doing. I was so scared. I wanted to save our boy. I surrendered. I let the darkness in, but it lied. It took Alif anyway, and then it took me. It took my mind, my soul. I felt dirty. I felt like I couldn't pray anymore. Every time I tried to bow down, I felt hands pushing me away. I went to the prison to see you, but you wouldn't see me. I understand. You hated me. I hated myself. I heard what happened. They said you died. I felt my soul die with you. I am trying to come back, Kudrat. I am trying to find the light again. But the factory, the people here, they serve the darkness. They are waiting for something, a grand ritual. I am afraid. I don't think I will survive this. If you find this, know that I loved you, and I am sorry for everything." Kudrat folded the letter. The tears were streaming down his face now, unchecked. She wasn't gone. She was out there, trapped in a factory run by the very demons that had destroyed their family. He started the engine. The road ahead was long, and the sun was setting, casting long, jagged shadows across the path. He wasn't just a man on a motorcycle anymore. He was a father on a warpath, and hell was waiting for him at the end of the road. The factory was a monstrosity of rusted iron and gray concrete. It loomed over the horizon like a tombstone, spewing black smoke into a perpetually dark sky. The ground around it was barren, cracked earth where nothing grew. Kudrat parked his bike a mile away, approaching on foot. He could feel the malevolence radiating from the place like heat from a furnace. He found a roadside stall, an old woman selling food. "Sister," he said, keeping his voice low, "is there a place to pray nearby?" The woman looked at him, her eyes milky with cataracts. "No mosques here, stranger. The masters do not allow it. They do not allow the call to prayer." "Where do the workers live?" "Down the road," she said, pointing a trembling finger. "But be careful, the security guards. They are not men." Kudrat nodded. He walked toward the workers' barracks. It was a squalid collection of wooden shacks. He needed information. He needed to know where Aziza was. He entered a shack where a group of women were eating a meager dinner. They looked up, startled. "Please," Kudrat said, "I am looking for my wife. Her name is Aziza." One woman, her face gaunt and tired, looked at him closely. "Aziza, yes, I know her. She works in the main building. She hasn't been the same lately. The dreams. We all have the dreams here. Where is she now?" "She should be in the dorms," the woman said. "But tonight is a selection night. The guards choose workers for the night shift. Special duty." A chill ran down Kudrat's spine. "What kind of duty?" The woman looked away. "The kind you don't come back from." Suddenly, shouts erupted outside. Heavy boots thundered on the wooden floor. "Security check," a voice barked. The door to the shack burst open. 3 large men in uniforms stood there, their faces hidden by shadows. "You," the leader pointed at a young girl sitting in the corner. "You're coming with us." The girl screamed, "No, please. I haven't done anything." The men grabbed her, dragging her out. Another woman tried to intervene, but one of the guards backhanded her, sending her sprawling into the wall. Kudrat saw red. He didn't think. He just moved. He stepped between the guards and the girl. "Let her go." The leader laughed. "And who are you?" "Hero. Get out of the way before you get hurt." I said, "Let her go." Kudrat repeated, his voice dropping into a tone that made the air around him vibrate. The guards lunged. Kudrat didn't fight them like a brawler. He fought like a warrior of God. He moved with fluid, devastating efficiency. He struck pressure points, disarmed them, used their own momentum against them. Within seconds, all 3 guards were writhing on the floor, moaning in pain. The other workers stared at him in awe and terror. "Run," Kudrat told the girl. "Hide." But it was too late. More guards were coming. Floodlights swept the area. Sirens wailed. Kudrat grabbed the arm of the woman who had told him about Aziza. "Take me to her now. My name is Yanni," the woman stammered. I can try, but the factory is locked down at night. Find a way," Kudrat commanded. Yanni led him through a maze of shanties, avoiding the searchlights. They arrived at the back of the factory complex, near a ventilation shaft. "My sister worked here," Yanni whispered, her voice trembling. "She died in an accident, but I found this. I think they are sacrificing people." She pointed to a small amulet she was wearing. It had strange symbols etched into it. "They put these in the food," she said, "to mark us." Kudrat looked at the ventilation shaft. It was narrow, dark, and led straight into the belly of the beast. "This is the way," Kudrat said. "I can't go in there," Yanni said, backing away. "I'm sorry. I'm too scared." "Go," Kudrat said gently. "You've done enough. Save yourself." He squeezed into the shaft. The metal was cold against his back. He crawled forward, the smell of oil and rot filling his nostrils. He emerged in a dimly lit corridor. The sound of machinery was deafening. The ground shook with the rhythm of huge pistons and crushers. He moved silently, sticking to the shadows. He saw workers, their eyes hollow, moving like zombies. They were chanting something under their breath, a low, guttural murmur. He found a stairwell and descended deeper underground. The air grew hotter. The smell of sulfur returned. He came to a heavy steel door. He could hear chanting on the other side, not just workers, but many voices. A ritual. He pushed the door open slightly and peered inside. The room was vast, a cavern hollowed out beneath the factory. In the center was a pit of fire. Around it stood men in robes, their faces obscured. And standing on a raised platform, holding a knife, was a man Kudrat recognized. It was the guard from the prison, the warden, the servant of Aswala. And beside him, bound and gagged, was Aziza. Kudrat's heart stopped. She looked thinner, older, but it was her. She was staring into the fire, her eyes devoid of hope. "Bring forth the offering," the warden shouted. Two guards dragged a young woman forward. It was the girl Kudrat had saved in the shack. They must have caught her immediately after he left. "No," Kudrat roared, bursting through the door. The cultists turned. Surprised, the warden smiled. He said, "The guest of honor, we've been expecting you." He waved his hand, and a dozen guards charged at Kudrat. Kudrat didn't back down. He met them head on. He was a man fighting for his soul, for his wife, for his redemption. He was a force of nature. He fought through the guards, striking them down, sending them tumbling into the fire pit. He reached the platform, grabbing a ceremonial sword from one of the fallen robed men. "Release her," Kudrat shouted, leveling the sword at the warden. The warden laughed. "You still don't understand, do you? She doesn't want to go. Look at her." Kudrat looked at Aziza. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the knife in the warden's hand. "Aziza," Kudrat whispered. "It's me, Kudrat. I came back for you." Aziza slowly turned her head. Her eyes were full of tears. You came back," she whispered. "Yes, I'm alive. We can leave. We can start over." Aziza shook her head slowly. "No, we can't. I did things, Kudrat, terrible things. To save Alif, to save myself. It doesn't matter," Kudrat said, stepping closer. "God is merciful, is he?" The warden interrupted. Ask her who she prays to now." Aziza looked at Kudrat, pain etched into every line of her face. "I prayed for Yadu," she confessed. "When I thought you were dead, I was so alone. The darkness promised me peace. It promised me you." She looked at the warden. "He told me he could bring you back, but he lied. He just wants to use me." The warden sneered. "And you will be used. Tonight, you will be the vessel for Yadu. The great demon will rise, and this factory will be his throne." Kudrat looked around the room. He saw the symbols on the floor. He felt the oppressive weight of the darkness. This wasn't just a cult. This was a gateway. He looked at Aziza. She was trembling, terrified. But he saw a spark of something in her eyes. A small, flickering light. It was fear. Yes, but it was also hope. Aziza, Kudrat said, his voice ringing with authority. Look at me. She met his gaze. Do not be afraid, he said. The darkness lied to you, but the truth never does. I am here. I am alive, and I am not leaving without you. The warden stepped forward, raising his knife. Touching, he slashed at Kudrat. Kudrat parried, the metal screeching. They fought on the edge of the platform, sparks flying as their blades clashed. Kill him, the warden ordered his remaining men. But suddenly, the heavy doors at the top of the room were blown open. A figure stood there, silhouetted by the light from above. It was Yanni, and behind her were the workers. Dozens of them, men and women who had been oppressed, beaten, and used. They were holding tools, wrenches, pipes, hammers. No more, Yanni screamed. They charged down the stairs, a wave of righteous fury crashing into the guards. The chaos was absolute. The ritual circle was broken. The warden roared in frustration, distraction giving Kudrat the opening he needed. He kicked the warden in the chest, sending him stumbling back toward the fire pit. The warden teetered on the edge, his arms flailing. He looked at Kudrat, his eyes burning with hatred. This isn't over, the warden hissed. Aswala will come for you, and next time, you won't have the strength to stop him. He grabbed Aziz's ankle as he fell. No. Kudrat lunged, grabbing Aziz's arms. It was a tug of war over her soul. Let go. The warden screamed. She belongs to the dark. Let her go. Kudrat shouted back. She belongs to the light. Aziza looked between them. She looked at the fire below, licking at the warden's back. She looked at Kudrat, sweat pouring down his face, love pouring out of his eyes. She made her choice. She kicked the warden in the face with her free foot. The warden lost his grip. With a final, horrifying shriek, he fell backward into the pit of fire. The flames engulfed him instantly. Kudrat pulled Aziza up onto the platform. They collapsed into each other's arms, holding on tight as if they would never let go. The fighting in the room had stopped. The guards, seeing their master destroyed, dropped their weapons and fled. The workers stood, panting, looking around in wonder. The oppressive atmosphere began to lift. The dark symbols on the floor seemed to fade, the black smoke dissipating into the air. Kudrat pulled back, cupping Aziz's face in his hands. I'm sorry, she wept. I'm so sorry for everything. It's okay, Kudrat said, wiping her tears. It's over now. We can go home. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something else, a shadow lingering deep within. The demon Yaduk had been denied his vessel, but his mark remained. The scars on her soul were not so easily healed. We can never truly go home, can we? Aziza whispered, echoing his thoughts. Kudrat looked around the factory, the machines slowly grinding to a halt, the silence returning. He knew she was right. They had survived. They had won the battle, but the war against the darkness was never truly over. Aswala was still out there, and as long as there was light, there would be shadows waiting to snuff it out. We will make a new home, Kudrat said softly, helping her to her feet. Together, they walked out of the factory, leaving the burning pit and the broken machines behind. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a pale, gray light over the barren wasteland. It wasn't a happy ending. It was just another beginning. And in the distance, carried on the wind, Kudrat thought he heard the faint, mocking laughter of a child. He tightened his grip on Aziz's hand. He wouldn't look back. He would keep walking forward into the light, no matter what lurked in the shadows ahead.